All right, welcome back. Today we're jumping into a really interesting one. It's the curious case of a stock called Intensity Therapeutics, or INTS for short. And let me tell you, what we're about to see is a real puzzle, a total head-scratcher. So let's get right into it. So take a look at this number, negative 44.68%. Yeah, that happened in just one day. I mean, that's an absolute bloodbath, right? But here's the thing. What if a drop this big, this catastrophic, isn't actually the end of the story? What if it's the start of something new? Well, that's the mystery we're going to try and solve today. So that leads us to the big question, right? Is this thing a complete catastrophe, or are we looking at the start of a comeback story? Is this stock in a death spiral, or is this one of those crazy events that actually signals a huge turning point? To figure that out, we've got to look past that scary headline number and really dig into what the data is telling us. All right, let's start decoding these mixed signals, because this is where the central contradiction, the real mystery, lies. On the one hand, you've got this absolutely disastrous price action, but then you look under the hood and some of the vital signs, well, they look surprisingly healthy. Okay, so this is the puzzle we need to piece together. Look at the left side, the alarming view. The stock plummets almost 45% in a day. It's trading near its 52-week low. I mean, these are signals that would make most people run for the hills, right? But then, look at the other side, the optimistic view. You've got a really strong technical score of over 80. The risk-reward ratio looks great at almost 2-to-1. And get this, the volatility, or its beta, is super low. So how can all of this be true at the same time? How can a stock look like a total disaster and a golden opportunity all at once? That's what we need to figure out. So to get to the bottom of this, we're going to go back to one of the first rules of analysis. Follow the money. And how do we do that? We look at the trading volume. Volume tells us more than just that the price moved. It tells us how it moved and with what kind of conviction. Now, before we look at the numbers, there's a key tool we're going to use called on-balance volume, or OBV. The easiest way to think about it is like a money flow detector. It basically keeps a running score. On days the stock closes up, it adds the day's volume to the score. On days it closes down, it subtracts the volume. So if you see the OBV line going up, it's a pretty good hint that buyers are stepping in, maybe even when you don't see it in the price yet. And check this out. This is where it gets really interesting. You have the price just taking this epic nosedive, right? Down 44%. But at the same time, the volume was more than 5 times the daily average. That's huge. Now, a massive price drop on insane volume, that's usually not just random noise. It can often be a sign of what's called a climax event. So what's the verdict from the volume? Well, it looks like a classic case of capitulation selling meeting emerging accumulation. What does that mean? Capitulation is just a fancy word for when panicked sellers finally throw in the towel. They just give up and dump their shares for whatever they can get. But, and this is the important part, that massive volume means that for every single one of those panicked sellers, there was someone on the other side buying. A whole lot of new buyers were stepping in, scooping up those shares on the cheap. This is how a bottom can start to form. Okay, so the volume story suggests a bottom might be forming. That's clue number 1. Now, for clue number 2, let's check the momentum. You can think of momentum indicators like the tachometer in your car. They don't just tell you the direction, they tell you the speed and the strength of the move. So, is this thing's engine stalling out, or is it just starting to rev up? And our go-to tool for this is the MACD. Now, don't worry about the name or the math behind it. All you really need to know for our purposes is that when we see a positive histogram, that's just the bars that show the difference between its 2 trend lines, it's a sign that upward momentum might be building under the surface. And here we go again with that contradiction. Remember that crazy price drop? Well, look at the momentum dashboard. The MACD histogram is actually positive, which suggests upward momentum is building. The RSI, another key indicator, is basically neutral. It's not overbought, it has plenty of room to run higher. And the overall momentum score is starting to turn positive. Put it all together, it looks like the downward pressure is losing steam, and a reversal might just be starting to brew. All right, so we've looked at the volume, we've checked the momentum, now we can start to piece together what could happen next. Let's lay out 3 possible futures. And just to be clear, this isn't a crystal ball. These are just the most likely scenarios based on all the evidence we have right now. Okay, scenario 1, the bullish case. If the price can punch through that key pivot point at 0.860 and do it with some real volume behind it, well, that could trigger a much bigger rally, maybe up toward the 1.02 level. Scenario 2 is the neutral, or let's call it the wait-and-see scenario. The stock could just bounce around for a bit, kind of consolidating between its support down at 0.570 and that 0.860 pivot, while the market just digests everything that happened. And then there's the bearish scenario. If all this new momentum just fizzles out, we could see it pull back and test that support level around 0.570. And if that level breaks, well, it could mean more downside to come.
So we've sifted through all this conflicting evidence. The big crash, the weirdly strong internals. What's the final takeaway? When we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, what does the picture actually look like?
I think this quote from the analysis really nails it. The stock appears to be in the early stages of a potential reversal with substantial room for recovery given the extreme oversold conditions. So in plain English, yeah, that price drop was absolutely terrifying, but the stuff happening under the surface, the technicals, suggest this thing might actually be waking up and could be at the very beginning of a turnaround. So, if you're watching this story play out, what are the key things to look for? Here are the clues. First, everything hinges on that 0.860 pivot point. Can it break above and stay above that level? Second, keep an eye on the volume flow. Are the buyers still showing up? Is that accumulation continuing? Third, watch those momentum gauges. We want to see the RSI start pushing higher, say above 65, to really signal that strength is building. And last but not least, buckle up. Expect more volatility. A stock like this isn't going to turn on a dime quietly. So, after the storm, is a reversal actually on the horizon? We've seen the absolute panic selling, but we've also seen the first green shoots of a potential new trend emerging from the wreckage. Now, of course, there are no guarantees in the market, but the evidence we've looked at today certainly suggests that for Intensity Therapeutics, this might not be the end of the story, but the beginning of a whole new chapter. Thanks for digging into this with me.